Shout out my nigga Nelson. For bruh. Everything is dope. Everything is dope. It's dope. It's dope. Yeah. It's dope. It's dope. It's dope. Everything is dope. My style is dope. Like my swag, of course. You have my robes. Montclair the code. These hoes is dope. They come to all my shows. They trying to fuck, but I tell them no. It's my queen, she dope.
What's up, y'all? Thank you for tuning in to Don Talk Podcast. I appreciate you. If you're coming back once again, I appreciate you for, just kind of sticking around with me and supporting me through this process. And if you're a newcomer, welcome to the Don Talk family. So, I had a question for you guys. Have you ever had that feeling where, you've felt out of place a little bit and you might have doubted yourself and said, oh no, what I'm doing isn't right, or I don't believe that what I'm doing is the right thing to do? Like a lot of, I don't want to say negative thoughts, but you haven't fully trusted yourself. If you have had that feeling, I think that, I think most of us have had a similar experience to where we kind of don't fully believe in ourselves or don't trust ourselves. So it hinders us from creating or doing something that we enjoy. And like for me, I know I've had this experience quite a few times where, I've doubted myself, and I don't seem to, since I don't trust myself, I don't seem to do the work or create like I should. So this experience that I'm talking about is Imposter Syndrome. And I feel like a lot of us have been through this. So it's a very relatable episode. And if you have experienced Imposter Syndrome in some shape or form, or you want to know more about it, this is the episode for you. So I have my notebook here. I did take some notes just because, I wanted to really give game on Imposter Syndrome and what it's like. I can give my experiences, which I'll do, and just some stuff that I looked up, because that's what we're supposed to do. Like once you find out useful information, you give it back to people who might need it, because that could help someone progress, or this episode someone could learn something about themselves that they never knew. So I feel like that's the important part of everything, living, learning, being with people, connecting. We're supposed to work as a unit, right? I also want to say, excuse all the background noise and the sirens, the lovely sounds of Dorchester as, I experience it. But, yes. So I want to start with like imposter syndrome. I feel like my definition of it is when I doubt myself, right? When I've been in a room and said, oh no, I don't belong here, right? And I just think that, it's something that happens to a good amount of people. Not everybody is willing to open up about it or talk about it, but I'm willing to share my story because I feel like that's how we'll grow as a people, right? And then hopefully, you guys can see me in a different light. And if you've had a similar experience, you're open to sharing that with me as well. So what I have here is imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally, despite being high performing in external objective ways. So, I have definitely felt that with this podcast. There were times, like especially in the beginning, where I was putting out an episode every week. Like when I started, I was recording with everybody. I was networking. So I was like, okay, I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to. I had the podcast going. I felt really good about it. Like I really did. And this has been the most consistent thing I've done. Realistically, I have taken time off, but I've still been able to produce for this podcast. So there was one time where I went out to, I think it was called Hello Black. It was a show in Boston. I think during COVID. I think during that time. If not during COVID, then the year after. But yeah, so I went to that, and normally I would have Kaya with me, but she wasn't here this time. So I was there by myself, and I walked into the room, and I was like, okay, this is cool. I like it in here. It's chill vibes, and I was seeing everybody that I had networked with or that I had known and followed. So I was like seeing people who made music and other podcasters. So I was like, okay, I see these people, just kind of admiring, watching. I was all the way in the back because I was like, I didn't come here to be seen. I was just coming to observe. So, I'm seeing all these people, and then, towards the end of the show, I started to feel a little weird, right? And I didn't know what it was. I was just kind of like, hey, what's that feeling, man? I just kind of, I couldn't explain it. Like, in my stomach, it felt like tight, and I was like, I started to panic a little bit. And the only other time I've panicked, not as bad, but where I panicked in a similar situation was when I had my panic attack in college, which will be another episode. But yeah, I don't know. I just I started hyperventilating a little bit, and I was like, man, I just got to get out of here. So, as it's ending, and people were chatting the whole time, but, as it's ending, I was like, I just got to get out of here. So I walked out immediately, and I was like walking back to the train station and all that. And I was just like, wow, I didn't know what it was because I was just unsure of, the knowledge behind it. But I think it was an anxiety attack a little bit, but that was also my imposter syndrome kicking in, because during that time where I was panicking, I was telling myself, I don't belong here. I shouldn't be here. These people, they're doing a lot more than me. I don't even need to be here, so I just didn't trust myself, and I felt like I didn't belong. Like I really was not supposed to be there. And I was confused about it because I'm like, hey, why did I feel like that, right? I had a podcast that obviously was just starting, but for me to be contributing something to the Boston art scene and feel like I didn't know what I was doing or I didn't belong in a space, that wasn't cool, and that didn't sit right with me. So I knew that I had to kind of do a little bit of research on why I felt like that. What is that? What was that feeling in that moment? And that was the imposter syndrome. So, there's a whole bunch of different, stories, but I guess the overall piece is that, when you feel like you're doing less than, or, you can kind of compare yourself, or you see other people doing something and you're like, oh, well, I'm not doing that. So, or I'm not as successful as that, so I shouldn't be doing it. That's imposter syndrome. So again, if you've had an experience like that, this is an episode you probably want to, stay tuned to. But something else that I looked up was plural ignorance. So I know I've experienced this as well. It's when we doubt ourselves privately, and we genuinely believe that no one else knows what we're going through. Right? So if I were to say, oh, I had that anxiety attack, or I went through imposter syndrome, but nobody will understand what that is, so I shouldn't talk to anybody. That's not really, because a lot of people have probably felt like that, to where they say, hey, you might be beating up on yourself and tell yourself that no one understands, but there's someone who understands. They might not be immediately in your circle, but there's someone who understands. But I know that that's not the truth. Like, people who genuinely care for you will be willing to understand, and they've probably been through it themselves, so it won't be that hard for them to kind of grasp the concept. But I do want to say, you're not alone. A lot of people have negative doubts and talk lowly of themselves. It's not just you that's going through it. So I want to make that clear. You're not the only one. I do it too. Even though I'm sitting here talking about it, I feel like I'm not conquered it, but I'm comfortable with it. I can talk about it. I'm open to being vulnerable because that's what I feel is a big piece to creating relationships and connecting. Vulnerability. I'm vulnerable with a lot of people on a regular basis because that's just what I can do. I open up to people easily, which I do need to work on, but I'm still like, I know that if I tell someone something about me, I've already been comfortable with it, so there's nothing that someone else can do to, like, no one can hold that against me, right? If I tell them something about me, you can't hold that against me and try to make me feel bad about it because I've already been to that place. You know, I've experienced it and I'm comfortable enough to talk about it. So, you know, I hope that if you're listening, you're able to get to the same place. And it takes a lot of work. I'm very comfortable with myself. I can laugh at myself, you know. I like to laugh and joke at myself because life is too short, as people say, but there's just no reason for being serious all the time, you know? Like, laugh a little bit, make a joke about yourself, man. Like, just kick back and don't stress too much about things you can't change. I can't change any of those situations that happen to me, but I know that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the process of it all. So I really did love that. And I'm grateful for those opportunities. I feel better about myself. I'm able to walk with my head high and my chest out because I'm that confident about the experiences I've been through. Okay. So the next part that I wanted to bring up was, you know, imposter syndrome can help, you know, it can prevent people from getting jobs. Sorry. You know, like, people will really say, oh, well, that's really what I want to do, but kind of get to a point where they're so stuck on that negative belief and be like, oh, well, yeah, that's really what I want to do, but I'm not good enough, so I can't do it. It's like, no, you can. And the only way that you're going to get through that is by talking about it. You have to be able to be open about it and say, you know, hey, I'm feeling this way because so-and-so. You know, I've definitely had my experiences where I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to talk to that person because, you know, they're super successful and I'm not as successful, so why would I waste my time? You never know. So I want to say real quick, I went to a podcast summit and, you know, it was just a great experience. I'll get into that in another episode as well because that was just a blast. And I have, you know, some game that I want to give. But someone that I saw there was CJ from the Secret to Success podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts. It's one of the reasons why this podcast exists right now. And, you know, I saw him speak. I loved his session. And then I saw him as he was leaving. And part of me was like, oh, I should get his attention and say hi. But then I was like, no, I shouldn't because, you know, I didn't feel that it was fitting at the time, you know. And I was like, he's on his way out and all that. But I was like, man, just do it. So I ended up calling. I was like, yo, CJ. And he turned. So I was like, okay, well, now that he's looking at me, I have to go over there, you know. And that was me stepping outside my comfort zone because, no, I'm not talking to people I don't know on a regular basis, especially if I've seen them. Like, if I've watched them for a while and then seeing them in person, yeah, I get starstruck. So I was like, But I saw him and like I chopped it up with him. I gave him his flowers and all that. But it was just cool to kind of step outside my comfort zone like that. Like, I even saw Dr. Umar at the airport when I first got to Miami, and that was cool because I was like, whoa, this is someone that, I respect him. Like, I like what he does, and all the memes are funny. Like, if you've seen Dr. Umar memes, man, it's just funny as hell. But it was like good for me to step outside my comfort zone and talk to people that I've seen online but never in person. But that's something that I became comfortable with, or I'm becoming comfortable with. I'll say that because I'm not perfect at it, but I'm becoming more comfortable with stepping outside my comfort zone, talking with people that I've never met before. So I do want to say, you got to talk about it. You got to be open. You got to be willing to make that change, because it's one thing to just kind of feel a way and not talk to anybody about it, versus if you feel a way and you do talk to someone, you might feel better about it. I know it's definitely helped me. I've called a bunch of people talking about whatever's going on, and for me, I don't need people to solve my problems. I've already figured it out. But me talking about it to someone will help me feel better. It just feels like a weight off my shoulders, and I'm not holding it in. Writing it down also helps too. Like I said earlier, if you are experiencing something and, you don't know why, write it down. I didn't say that earlier. Sorry, I lied. But, it's definitely important to write it down if you feel that something is bothering you, because then you can really dig and say, okay, well, why is that, and then you can create your own web of the root feeling and all these things that might have triggered it. So again, this is getting deeper and deeper into it, but we're gonna take a step back, and focus more on the imposter syndrome, right? You see, this is all good content. I'm like, ooh, see, I'm out here, I'm doing deep dives in my brain, and I'm like, okay, I got this. You got this, AK. You got this. All right, but something else that I wanted to talk about was, so there's 5 types of imposter syndrome categories, which I didn't know. So this was cool to me, so I wrote this down because I was like, yo, I really like this, and I feel like I've definitely experienced all 5. So first is the perfectionist. That's the high standards, control freak, someone who's like, oh, I should start my podcast, or I should start creating whatever, you should start something, but you're waiting for the right time. You want to have everything perfect, and it's never going to be the right time. Never. If I had waited for this podcast to be perfect before, I never would have. Sorry, I can't even speak. I wouldn't have started it if I was waiting for everything to be perfect, So that perfect time never comes. Yeah, you should definitely I recommend having a plan or an idea, but don't even think like too deep. Just kind of get something down so you can start. Starting is the most important thing. The time is now to start it. So whatever it is you're contemplating on, oh, maybe I should start. Yes, do it. Start it now. The time is now. I'm going to say it one more time. The time is now. Start it now. I'm a big believer in that. That's something that I learned at the conference. You have to start. You have to. That's just the biggest part. You can learn as you go. All right. The next one is the Superman, Superwoman. And I've definitely done this, but not in terms of like podcasting. This is more just like personal stuff. So with this one, you're constantly competing with your peers, right? So, you always want to match where they're at and try to say, oh, okay, well, they're there, so I'm going to do this to get to where they are, right? which is comparison in a sense. You know, not the best, but sometimes it can be used as a good motivator. So I don't necessarily think this one is bad. I don't think any of them are bad because they're not bad traits. This is just for awareness to understand. Okay, this is which one I am. This is the category I fall into. All right, so we have perfectionist and Superman, Superwoman. So high standards and always in competition, essentially. The next one is the natural genius, who sets a high bar and judge themselves on the ability to succeed on the first try. So they say these are the people who are like, oh, well, yeah, the podcast, like, my first episode has to be fire. I got to do it in one take. The amount of times I restarted this video in audio, like, I'm not going to get it on my first try. I never expected to get it on my first try. But I'm still comfortable with doing it. I can do it over and over. I can always restart, right? When I stutter, I'm not like, oh, okay, well, I messed up. It's okay. Take a break. You can take a break. You can pause and keep going. Or you can take a break. You can restart. It's fine. Everything does not have to be perfect. You're not going to get it right the very first time. My first episode, I don't think it was that good. The audio levels were, off. And I know I think there was one thing where I talked about, like Cardi B and something, I don't know, it was something about like her Louboutins. But this is back when like, what is it? Bodak Yellow came out and all that. And they were like, I don't know, we were talking about something. And I think what I said was like, oh yeah, she mentioned her bloody shoes, whatever, because she's associated with Bloods and all that. But I was like, no, it's because Louboutins are red bottoms, but it was something like that really bothered me because I was like, dang, I said that. I still put it out. I don't care. It was the first episode. Like, it wasn't supposed to be perfect. Even now doing this, I'm like, okay, it's not perfect. I've been doing this for 4 years. It's not perfect. There's a lot more to learn. And I'm willing to put in that work to learn. I'm trying to get better with tracking so I can see where I'm at and where I have to go. That's what you got to do. The next one is the soloist. Oh my gosh. Man, this is definitely me. Soloist. So, this is the asking for help shows inability. Asking for help means you can't do it. And that's how I am. That's how I've been with this podcast. Like, I wanted a co-host, but at the same time, I'm like, man, this is my baby. I can't let someone else come in and try to control it. But I'm also like, now I'm at a point where I would like a co-host, but I'm too nervous to ask for a co-host. Like, if someone is genuinely looking to be a co-host, I'm afraid to ask for that because I don't want it to get messed up, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want people to think I don't know what I'm doing, right? So that's an insecurity within me that I have to become comfortable with. So, for anyone looking to, if you are looking to host a podcast, a mental health podcast for creatives between 18 to 35, this is my pitch for, looking for a co-host if you know someone or if you yourself are trying to co-host a podcast. Hit my DMs. I'll put my username, my Instagram in the details, and we can connect. But yeah, like I'm asking for help right now. That's all we got to do. We can ask for help. And last but not least, the final one is the expert. So we have perfectionist, Superman, Superwoman, natural genius, soloist, and expert. And the expert is the individual who measures competence based on what or how much they know and do. So with this, I feel that I kind of do this a little bit. So, since I don't know a whole lot about podcasting, like I'm learning, I might be a little hard on myself because I'm like, dang, I don't know all that. I don't know everything about mental health. I've been having more conversations about it, but it's based on, I can't down myself because I don't know everything about mental health. Nobody knows everything about anything. Nobody does a great amount of work in like all the time. Like sometimes you mess up. That's okay. Sometimes you might get lazy and you don't want to, you don't do something that you feel like you should. Okay. It's okay. It's okay. But I genuinely believe that, man, as long as you're trying, as long as you're putting in some sort of work, right? Okay. I think that's good. Let me finish that sentence. If you're trying, that's a step in the right direction. Now, if you really do want to overcome that insecurity, do the work. If you, I don't know everything about it. Do the work. Look it up. You can go online, YouTube, books, like those are 3 of the biggest things. And this is something that I learned. If you read 1 to 3 books in a year, that's way more than the average person reads. Most people aren't reading every day, so that's all you got to start with. Just read a book on the topics that you want to talk about. That's what I'm doing. That's what I did here. Like, I didn't have it all memorized, but I wrote the stuff down here. This is a conversation on imposter syndrome. So how am I combating my imposter syndrome? I'm doing the work. I didn't know everything about imposter syndrome. I know my own experience, which I shared earlier, but I'm studying to get a better idea of what imposter syndrome looks like. If you have your own story, I would love to hear it. Or if you have ways that you combat imposter syndrome, I would love to hear it. Like, that's a conversation that we can have because maybe you have a skill that I don't know, or someone who's listening might not be aware of, that they would like to try. So I think that's something that, is good to have conversations like that and like this about important pieces of mental health, such as imposter syndrome, which people regularly deal with. I say most people deal with imposter syndrome. So yeah, let's step outside our comfort zone. Let's do things that will make us uncomfortable, because that's how we combat imposter syndrome. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Non Talk Podcast. And I want to shout out David Shands and for putting the podcast summit together, because I really met some cool people down there. Like I said, that's going to be another episode. I want to shout out my friends at Success System Podcast, because I worked with Amadeus and Hardy, who really helped me get the skills I need to even be able to do this episode right here. So I feel comfortable because of them, and I recommend them for anything, and y'all know me. If you know me, y'all know I love black owned stuff. So these are 2 good brothers. Shout out to Sherry J. That's just black people coming together, helping black people. So beautiful. But yeah, I want to shout them out too. I also want to shout out my friend Miriam. It's her birthday. As you guys are listening, it is her birthday. So happy birthday to you, Miriam. I'm gonna cut this clip up and I'm gonna send it to you, because this is your birthday. Your birthday call out, I guess. Birthday shout out. There we go. Birthday shout out from me. So yeah, But thank you guys again for tuning in. And, I'm going to try something new because I feel like I got to be consistent with my openings and my endings. So, hey, man. It's not season. Let's get it.
Since I switched up the flow, call me the drip god, similar to the Pope. I'm on the wave god, like my nigga Draco. We keep it drizzy like we rep OVO. Salute to Johnny Guapo and Harry Tulos, my bros. Till the casket close, until that's all she wrote. If you ain't no bitch now, you know that everything is dope. It's dope. It's dope. I said everything is dope. So dope. Everything is dope. My flow is dope. My shows is dope. My mojo is everything is dope. So dope. Everything is dope. I'm gon' get it. I put that on my mama, man. Leave a little drip in the city like Ronnie Charlemagne. Salute to my niggas, man. Because everything is dope. We dope. It's dope.